Welcome back, everybody, to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I want to thank Speaker of the House, Nick Mattiello, for joining us in the first half-hour segment, giving some insights into everything from the state deficit to federal legislation and, of course, the POSOX. The money man, Gary Sasse, is here, probably straight from the bank or safety deposit box or bonded vault or whatever you guys with massive amounts of capital do. Let's see, the speaker says let's not go too quickly on this POSOX deal. It's sounding like this is a 18 deal at best, and certainly you could see it slip out of next legislative session. You heard him. What do you think?
Well, it's really quite unfortunate that this thing has been kicking around for 2 years now, and we're still, the speaker's not comfortable that he has the right information to make a decision, and I find that very disappointing. Because if eventually it just wears the public down. If the strategy is to wear the public down, they're doing a pretty good job.
Isn't this just a waste of time? I mean, to some degree, it's 32 jobs. It's a minor league baseball team. We've got bigger proverbial fish to fry, whether it's development of downtown, Superman building, CVS and Aetna, UHIP, and 20 other things that really are much more important to our economy.
Right. It's taking attention away from issues that have much more impact on the state. The other issue, too, is, as you've discussed in the federal legislation, to cut taxes and create jobs, there's a provision to do away with the tax exemption for the sale of bonds for stadiums. I'm familiar with that to some extent. I don't know anybody in Washington that is not for that.
Yeah, right.
Now, I'm sure there may be an interest here or there that comes out, and K Street is very influential and very powerful. Right. But right now, it's hard to imagine that they will take that out of the bill that goes to the president, if in fact the bill goes to the president.
Yeah.
And that changes the ballgame. It changes.
Does that kill the deal?
No, it doesn't kill the deal. They'll have to pay a little more interest. No, it doesn't kill the deal. It makes the deal a little less attractive, and it really raises questions as to whether or not what is being portrayed as the revenue and the cash to support it will be sufficient. But no, it's not a deal killer. It's just
a couple $1 million difference.
It's an aggravation, yeah.
We, as you appropriately pointed out, it started with Jim Skeffington in 15, I think the beginning of 16, I think was about the period of time, and now we're heading into 18, so it's about a little over about 2 years. And we probably had 10 different proposals in one structure or another. Are you surprised that during this process, Commerce has yet to dig into and do the due diligence? Clearly, the Senate Finance Chair and the Speaker, and even the Governor made an utterance about it, is that we haven't seen their financials. And is that a surprise that due diligence by Commerce hasn't been done?
Well, not to me, it's not. I've discussed Commerce a long time. I think it's a very political agency. And I think, too, I would be very interested if the media interviewed the member of Commerce's board and asked them what they approved and at what point the deal was brought to them and what they know about the deal. Because my impression is the board itself, and that's who protects the interest. It's not very much involved. So I think there are really questions about how Commerce operates, how Commerce makes decisions. Whether it's too much of an alliance between the governor's office and the staff there. What role is the board playing? Now, I'm sure if you ask members of the board, they would disagree with 90% of what I've just said. But watching these things and not seeing a clear paper trail of what the board did and didn't do, I think there are some concerns how the agency operates.
You're all powerful. We deem you all powerful. What is Money Man, if he's put in charge of this? What's the next step for this deal if you had discretion over this thing?
I think there are two steps. I think let's finish the due diligence. Let's get it right. I think the speaker's on the right track by wanting to make sure that we turn over every stone and have all the T's crossed and I's dotted. We don't want another 38 studios. That's doable. I think the legislature has been making progress in their hearings. It started out as a real circus, but they've recovered from that, I think. I'm a little concerned that we're asking Auditor General, who's an appointed official of the legislature, he gets paid by the legislature, to divine in the dark, whether it's a good deal or not. I think the optics on that just raise cynicism, and it's not a commentary on the Auditor General, because he's a very qualified, independent, capable person. I have just the greatest regard, but just the optics in putting an office, a bureaucrat in that position is kind of a peculiar way to do business. So I think the first thing is for the people to have a good sense that everything is disclosed, that we know what the deal is. It doesn't have to be a perfect deal, but we have to know what it is. And then I think the second step, and this is really very important, because we got to get some of the bad feeling out of our system.
Have we hit deal fatigue?
I don't know. Well, if you're making the deals, we haven't. If you're paying for the deals, maybe so. But I think the real important part to get some of the bad decisions of the past behind us is to disclose everything we know, best we can, best due diligence, have the legislature make a recommendation, have people vote on it.
Yeah.
And I think because the way the process has progressed, if you don't have a vote, there's always going to be some cynicism, and it may work out. Deals, nothing ever works out. No one ever hits the target at right in dead center.
Oh boy, we're a year away. I mean, but we're not done with this deal yet. It makes sense that it go before the voter in November of 18.
Now it doesn't matter, does
right.
it? Right. And I don't know what suitors the Porsacs have. Having the people vote may be the best thing. First of all, they have the money. Or the people that support them have the money to run an aggressive campaign, an aggressive advertising campaign.
And it's a one-side campaign. It's not like there's an opposition group.
Right, and if there was an opposition group, they certainly would not have the same resources to promote the deal and to get out the vote. So, but I think those are the two things that have to happen. It has to be the Speaker and the Governor and the Senate President have to be on the same sheet. They have to agree what is being presented is correct to the best of their knowledge, and then the ultimate authority of the people, they should decide. The third, and those are the two things to answer your question. The third thing, and it's
you're adding in a third.
No,
you had two. Now you're going for the third.
Well, they're cheap, so nothing's going to happen unless there's leadership.
Yeah.
And the governor can say all day long she's for the deal, and I'm sure she is, but there's passive leadership and there's aggressive leadership. And a lot of the conversation about the Poor Sox, because of the political nature of the deal, has been more in the passive category than in the aggressive category.
Let's jump over to UHIP. Last week, just talked to the Speaker about this as well. Deming Sherman, known to many of us as a top flight corporate attorney in Providence. Is he the right person to fix a convoluted, complex technology failure?
Well, I can't comment on that. He's the right person if he knows where to get help and he knows the right questions to ask. So yeah, he has the potential to be the right person. You don't have to get the technology person as the head of the
it seems like we've never gotten the technology person. We had a nice guy named Tom Girton. He was a technologist up at the Boston Globe, not exactly on a peer level with Deloitte Consulting that probably employs 1,000 technologists, and then Eric Bean got named to oversee.
I think he's probably doing a pretty good job.
Justice Department attorney, but we're not matching up
there's
technology firepower with technology firepower.
There's an inherent difficulty government has. All governments, not just Rhode Island, but governments everywhere, can't afford to keep on staff the number of people an Accenture has, or Deloitte has, or McKinsey has, and so you're forced to get into go get those resources because they're not permanent. We make it permanent because we screw the projects up and they last so long, but if they stayed on schedule, those are not permanent jobs. And so and it's hard to find the capacity, the resources, the skilled people that want to stay in state government. It's hard to find them if you don't know what the next project's going to be. And so we created a kind of what I would call a government industrial complex, which
Yeah.
consists of using consultants. and
Should
tech-
we have had equal firepower on the consulting after the first failure last?
Where we drop the ball, you're right, where we drop the ball is oftentimes, we hire people, but we don't give them the resources
Right.
to get the job done. And the resources doesn't necessarily mean, it doesn't mean at all, that you don't have to hire consultants to come in and do it, because you don't have the manpower and the resources and the scale, nor should you, because you're not doing this every day. You're doing one-time projects. But we somehow have not backed up and supported our CIOs. We've gotten CIOs in. I know several of them. I don't have any issue with their competence, but you look at the breadth of things that they work on, and we're not taking technology seriously as we should, not investing in it to the degree we ought to. And it's really quite ironic that, we're an innovation economy.
Right.
And we're not the innovation state government.
Right.
That's very, very clear.
Let's jump down to Washington, federal tax proposal, tax reform. Where are we with that?
Well, the staff and some of the leaders were quite happy with the rollout. In anything this big, there are going to be, issues, but it's going through markup. The markup in the House is supposed to have started today.
Will they try and get it through by December?
I think
by
they're-
the end of the year?
I think they're going to try to get it out of the House by Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
The Senate's a problem, because if you lose 2 votes, you have a Christmas tree. But the issues, as I sit back and I look at it, matter of fact, today I was working on some talking points with various people on this. There seem to be 4 or 5 big issues that they have to resolve. They have to resolve the question of mortgage interest deductibility. It was $1 million. They want to reduce it to $500,000. And that doesn't recognize that there are regional differences in the cost of housing and mortgages. There's the state local tax exemption, the SALT. On property taxes, it's $10,000. In many cities in East Greenwich, or in Rhode Island rather, East Greenwich, the Barringtons, the high tax communities, $10,000 property tax bill is good.
Yeah.
Remember, 12,
Right.
13,000, and so that exists other places. How you deal with the income tax is really a conundrum, because it's very regressive. Because of the progressive nature of the tax, the guys at the top can use the deduction and write it off. 70% of the people don't even use it.
Right.
They can't. They don't write it off. And this is the balancing act, and what they're trying to figure out right now is a lot of people that work in Silicon Valley or on the East Coast are high paid, highly skilled, highly innovative, an important part of the productive economy, and you pay them well. And so how do you how do you balance that with the regressivity question I've just raised? So that's going back and forth. Another issue that they're working on is the pass-through. Taxing S corps effectively is at 25%.
Right.
Well, that doesn't do squat for mom and pop, because if your income is less than $260,000, you can't get the lower rate.
Right.
And so that has to be worked through, because if it's really for small business, let's open our eyes up and define what that means. Because a lot of
Is this going to help bring some of that offshore money back at the lower corporate tax rate?
Yes, the best part of the bill,
Yeah.
and I think where they did a good job, and the politics of it, the optics of the politics are bad, but we're getting the corporate rate down. Now, I don't think it has to go from 35 to 20. I think it can go from 35 to 22, 23, in that range. But what we're doing to go into a territorial system, what we're doing to accelerate depreciation, what we're doing to lower the rate, that's a very solid package. And I don't know where this will come out. The president wanted 15%. A lot of the K Street guys and the big businesses, which is really that's also was encouraging. All the conservative groups and big business, they're very much united behind this. There's not any divisiveness there. Whether they could create the incentives at a 25% rate, if they can, I think that's really a very sound package. That's a sound part of the bill. And if you stepped away from it just for a second, and just as a person, an economist looking at what we need to do to improve our economic competitiveness, it's not only the individual side, there are a lot of reasons to mess with the individual side, tax fairness, clean up the tax code. et cetera.
Simplify.
Simplify, well, this is simplify, you're still gonna use an accountant. But the thing that would have the most impact on jobs is the corporate tax. And yet, the Democrats have been such hypocrites about this and demagogues about it, because they say, well, the corporate tax cuts just help the rich guys. Well, the corporate tax is much more nuanced and much more complicated. And from the studies that I've been involved with, a lot of the money benefits capital, but still a good percentage benefits labor. And you may have a 2-to-1 ratio capital to labor, but that's the important. If you square for everything else, say my focus is on growth and jobs, fixing up the corporate structure is really important. And I would give them a A- on that. I think they did a pretty good job on that.
Last question before you go. Give us a handicap on this. Passes the House by December 1? End of the year?
No, I think, well, to get it there, they had a 4-vote
Yeah.
cushion. They lost 20 votes. Some of the votes they lost were from states that were concerned about the state-local deductibility. So they have to do some more to pick up those votes. And then there are some concerns on the issues I mentioned. And so there'll be the markup will be interesting. We haven't talked about carried interest. I'm anticipating that they'll get rid of it as part of the conversation. So I think it's a good chance in the House, but I wouldn't.
The Senate?
That's too hard. Those hard to read. You're dealing with free agents there.
Yeah.
It's like it's like a bunch of guys that have they're down there in line to get a big contract somewhere, so they're going to negotiate with everybody. You got some legitimate concerns. We need to speak about this, which the Senate's raising. Is this would add, at least on the way they're being scored right now, $1.5 trillion to the deficit. So when we put it in perspective, when President Obama came into office, the deficit was about $11 trillion. When President Obama left office, the deficit was $20 trillion. And the dilemma everyone has is this: no one wants to add to the deficit.
Right.
But you can't save your way out of the deficit. Cut what you can cut: Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. You can't cut those programs. Can't cut defense. Can't cut debt. So the only way you get out of the deficit is not just by cutting spending, though you have to be much more frugal.
Listen, we've been trying cutting our way out of it since Graham Rudman back in the.
And this is the crapshoot.
Right.
If you have to grow revenue to get out of the deficit, and the crapshoot is this: by making these cuts, are we going to generate enough jobs to generate revenue so that we're not adding to the deficit? And you talk to different economists, you get different opinions. My opinion is at this point, with the proper safeguards, and let me tell you what I mean by the proper safeguards.
We've got 1 minute.
Not going to 20% on the corporate rate, go to 22%. Not doing the estate tax phase out and elimination right now. Take a few items out, knock that $1.5 trillion number down to about $1 trillion, and then growth should take care of it.
Great. Money Man, always thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Interesting hearing you and Nick Mattiello back to back on the Pawsox.
We actually agree.
You actually agree? I remember when you guys used to brawl a couple of years ago on the pages of Go Local. We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to hear from one of the more interesting professors at Brown University, a guy at the cutting edge, working with the private sector on coming up with some very interesting technology solutions. We'll be right